The moment he opened that door, I thought my entire life was over. I was sure the secret I had hidden for years was finally exposed, and the person standing in front of me would never look at me the same way again. I expected anger, disappointment, maybe even rejection. But what happened next changed everything I believed about myself. He didn't destroy my secret, he unlocked a part of me that I had spent my whole life trying to hide. And the strangest part was this: once I finally saw the person I could become, I realized I didn't want to go back to the person I was pretending to be. For years, I lived with a secret that felt impossible to explain. From the outside, everyone saw me as a normal guy with a normal life. I had friends, responsibilities, and a routine that looked completely ordinary. I laughed with people, went to work, and acted like nothing was different. But whenever I was alone, there was another side of me that I never allowed anyone to see. It wasn't about trying to fool anyone. It wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was about discovering a part of myself that had always been there but was buried under fear and doubt. I still remember the first time I tried on feminine clothing. My hands were shaking. I looked around the room like someone was watching me, even though I was completely alone. There was a strange mix of emotions inside me: excitement, nervousness, curiosity, and guilt. A part of me felt free, but another part kept asking, what if someone finds out? That question followed me everywhere. I would hide things carefully. I would make sure everything looked normal. I became an expert at keeping two different worlds separated. One world was the person everyone knew. The other world was the person I only allowed myself to see in private. But keeping a secret doesn't just hide something from others, sometimes it hides something from yourself. The hardest part wasn't the clothing. The hardest part was the constant fear. The fear of being judged. The fear of losing people. The fear that maybe there was something wrong with me, because I felt different. I spent years fighting against that feeling instead of understanding it. Then one day, everything changed. His name was Alex. He was someone I trusted more than almost anyone. We had known each other for a long time, and he was the kind of person who noticed small details that others ignored. He could tell when someone was uncomfortable even if they were smiling. I never planned for him to discover my secret. It happened completely by accident. I had forgotten to put something away before he came over. It was something small, something I thought nobody would ever notice. But when I walked into the room and saw him holding it, my heart stopped. The silence felt louder than any argument could have been. My first reaction was panic. I didn't even wait for him to say anything. "I can explain," I said quickly. But the truth was, I didn't even know how to explain it myself. I started giving excuses. I tried to make it seem like it was nothing. I tried to laugh it off. I tried everything except admitting the truth. Because admitting the truth meant becoming vulnerable. It meant showing someone the part of me I had protected for years. Alex looked at me and simply asked one question. "Why are you so afraid of me knowing?" That question hit me harder than I expected. Because I realized I wasn't only afraid of his reaction. I was afraid of my own reaction. I had spent so much time convincing myself that this part of me had to stay hidden that I forgot to ask whether hiding it was making me unhappy. I finally sat down and told him everything. I told him about the curiosity I had felt for years. I told him about the moments when I felt more confident, more comfortable, and more like myself. I told him about the fear and confusion that came with it. I expected him to judge me. Instead, he listened. Really listened. And that was something I had never experienced before. He didn't interrupt. He didn't laugh. He didn't treat me like I was suddenly a different person. After a long silence, he said something I will never forget. "You have spent years hiding because you were afraid people would see you differently. But maybe the person who needed to see you clearly was yourself." Those words stayed with me. For the first time, I started thinking differently. Maybe my secret wasn't something that had to control my life. Maybe understanding myself was better than constantly fighting myself. Alex became the first person who encouraged me to stop living in fear. He didn't tell me to become someone else. He didn't force me into anything. He simply helped me understand that exploring who I was didn't mean losing who I had been. That was the beginning of a completely new chapter. But starting that chapter was not easy. The first time I stepped outside while presenting myself differently, my entire body felt nervous. Every person walking past me felt like they were looking directly at me. Every sound made me think someone had noticed. My mind created 100 imaginary problems before anything even happened. But then something surprising happened. Nobody cared as much as I thought they would. People were busy living their own lives. The world didn't stop. And slowly, the fear started becoming smaller. I learned something important during that journey. Confidence doesn't appear before you take the first step. Confidence is created because you take the first step. I started learning small things. How to choose clothes that matched my personality. How different styles changed my confidence. How posture, expressions, and the way I carried myself affected how I felt. But the biggest lesson was that transformation wasn't just about appearance. It was about acceptance. Many people think changing the outside is the hardest part, but the real challenge happens inside your mind. You have to stop asking, will people accept me? And start asking, do I accept myself? That was the question that changed everything. Alex noticed the difference before I did. You seem happier, he told me one day. And he was right. I wasn't happier because I had become someone completely different. I was happier because I had stopped pretending that an important part of me didn't exist. But just when I thought I was finally becoming comfortable with myself, another challenge appeared. The secret that had once been hidden was no longer only between Alex and me. Someone else was about to discover the truth. And this time, I had no idea if I was ready for what would happen next. The day I realized someone else knew my secret, I felt the same fear I had felt years ago. It was strange because I thought I had already overcome that fear. I thought I had become stronger. I thought I had learned how to accept myself. But one moment can bring back emotions you thought you had already defeated. I noticed the change immediately. The way she looked at me was different. Not angry, not cruel, just surprised. And somehow that was even harder. Anger would have been easier to understand. Anger would have given me something to defend against. But curiosity made me nervous because I didn't know what questions were coming next. For years, I had created walls around this part of my life. Those walls protected me, but they also isolated me. Every time someone got close to discovering the truth, I felt like my entire world was in danger. But this time was different. I wasn't the same person I was before. I had learned something from Alex. Running away from yourself only makes life harder. So instead of hiding, I decided to be honest. I sat down and prepared myself for the conversation. My heart was racing. I had imagined this moment hundreds of times in my head, but reality always feels different. I know what you saw, I said quietly. There was a long pause. Then she asked the question I never expected. Does this make you happy? That question stopped me, because nobody had ever asked me that before. Everyone always focused on what it meant, what people would think, what rules existed, what others might say. But nobody had asked how I felt. And the honest answer was simple. Yes. For the first time, I didn't apologize for my feelings. I didn't try to make myself smaller. I didn't try to convince someone that it was just a phase or something meaningless. I simply admitted that this part of me brought confidence and peace. That conversation changed everything. Not because everything suddenly became perfect. Life doesn't work like that. There were still moments of doubt. There were still difficult conversations. There were still times when I questioned myself. But the difference was that I was no longer fighting alone. I started realizing that many people who hide parts of themselves are not afraid of who they are. They are afraid of losing the people around them. And that fear can become heavier than the secret itself. I also learned that everyone's journey is different. Some people discover themselves quickly. Others need years. Some people share their truth openly. Others take smaller steps. There is no single timeline. The most important thing is understanding yourself with patience. During this time, Alex continued supporting me, but he also reminded me of something important. Don't change because you think you need to become someone else, he told me. Change because you want to become more comfortable being yourself. That advice stayed with me. Because before this journey, I thought transformation meant leaving my old life behind. I thought becoming more feminine meant destroying everything about my past. But I discovered something completely different. My past was still part of me. The person I was before was not someone I needed to hate. He was the person who survived the difficult years. He was the person who carried the fear. He was the person who searched for answers. And without him, I would never have reached this point. Slowly, my confidence started growing. I began paying attention to details I had ignored before. The way certain clothes made me feel. The way colors affected my mood. The way small changes could completely change how I saw myself. I learned that femininity was not a costume. It was not something that could be measured by a dress, makeup, or hairstyle. It was a feeling, a connection with yourself, a way of expressing something that had always existed inside. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that confidence comes from practice. The first time I tried a new style, I felt uncomfortable. The second time, I felt less nervous. The 10th time, it started feeling natural. Growth happens slowly. Nobody wakes up one day completely confident. Confidence is built through small moments where you choose not to hide. I also learned how important it is to surround yourself with people who respect your journey. Not everyone will understand immediately. Not everyone will have the same opinions. But the people who truly care about you will try to understand the person behind the appearance. That was something I never expected. I thought losing people was inevitable. But instead, I discovered new connections. I discovered conversations I never thought I could have. I discovered that honesty could create stronger relationships than pretending ever could. However, there was still one person I had avoided telling. Someone whose opinion mattered more than anyone else's. And that conversation was the hardest one yet, because this person had known me my entire life. They knew my childhood. They knew my personality. They knew every version of me. I was terrified that after learning my secret, they would only see one thing. I was afraid they would forget everything else. The night before telling them, I barely slept. My mind kept creating worst-case scenarios. What if they rejected me? What if they said things I could never forget? What if the relationship we had built over years disappeared in one conversation? But then I remembered something. Fear had controlled enough of my life already. I didn't want fear making my decisions anymore. So the next morning, I walked into that conversation knowing it could change everything. And maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. Because sometimes a new life doesn't begin when everything becomes easy. Sometimes it begins when you finally choose to be honest, even when you are afraid. And what happened after that conversation completely changed the way I saw acceptance, family, and myself forever. I still remember sitting there, waiting for the reaction that I had feared for so long. The room felt smaller than usual. Every second felt longer. I was prepared for disappointment because, in my mind, I had already imagined every possible negative outcome. But sometimes the reality we fear the most is not the reality that happens. I finally told the truth. I explained everything from the beginning. I talked about the years of confusion, the fear, the hiding, and the journey of understanding myself. I didn't try to make it sound perfect. I didn't try to make myself look like I had all the answers. I simply told my story. And after I finished speaking, there was silence. That silence felt endless. Then came the words I never expected to hear. I wish you didn't spend so many years being afraid to tell me. Those words broke something inside me. Not in a painful way, in a freeing way, because I realized how much energy I had spent protecting a secret that was a part of me, not something that made me less valuable. For years, I thought acceptance was something other people had to give me, but that moment taught me something different. Acceptance also had to come from within. I couldn't build my entire happiness around whether every person understood me. I couldn't spend my whole life waiting for permission to feel comfortable with myself. I had to learn to respect my own journey first. That was the moment everything started changing. Not overnight, not magically, but slowly. I started waking up with less fear. I started looking in the mirror without immediately searching for flaws. I started seeing myself as a complete person instead of someone divided into two different lives. The mirror that once reminded me of my secret started becoming a place where I saw progress. Every small improvement became a reminder that I was moving forward. A new style, a new level of confidence, a new way of expressing myself. These things might have looked small to other people, but to me, they represented years of struggle finally turning into something positive. One thing I learned during my transformation was that many people focus too much on changing their appearance while forgetting to build their confidence. Clothes can change your look. Makeup can change your presentation. A hairstyle can change your appearance. But confidence comes from knowing who you are. Without that foundation, even the most beautiful transformation can still feel empty. I began focusing on myself differently. Instead of asking, "Do I look perfect?" I started asking, "Do I feel comfortable?" That simple change completely transformed my mindset. Because perfection is impossible, but authenticity is something everyone can achieve. There were still challenges. There were still days when I questioned myself. There were still moments when I compared myself to others and wondered if I was doing enough. But I learned not to judge my journey against someone else's. Everyone has a different story. Everyone has different struggles. Everyone discovers themselves at a different pace. The internet often shows only the final result. It shows confidence, beauty, and success. But it doesn't always show the nervous moments before that. The first attempt, the mistakes, the doubts, the learning process. And that is something I wish more people understood. A transformation is not just about the final image. The real transformation happens during the journey. It happens when you choose courage over fear. It happens when you stop hiding from yourself. It happens when you finally allow yourself to grow. Alex was the person who helped me understand that. He never treated my journey like something strange. He treated it like something personal, something worth understanding. He reminded me that the most important person I needed to impress was myself. One evening, we talked about how different everything had become. I told him that I never imagined my secret would lead me to a completely different life. I thought discovering my secret would destroy everything. Instead, it helped me discover everything I had been missing. He smiled and said, "Sometimes the thing we are most afraid of losing is the thing that helps us find ourselves." That sentence stayed with me, because it was true. I had spent years afraid of losing my old life. But I didn't realize I was also losing opportunities to become happier. I was losing confidence. I was losing honesty. I was losing the chance to truly know myself. The biggest surprise was that becoming more comfortable with myself didn't make me a different person. It made me a more complete person. My personality didn't disappear. My memories didn't disappear. My experiences didn't disappear. Everything that made me who I was remained. I simply stopped hiding one important part of myself. As time passed, I became more comfortable sharing my experiences with others who were also struggling with their own identity and confidence. I realized many people were silently living with the same fears I once had. They were afraid of being judged, afraid of rejection, afraid that accepting themselves would mean losing everything. I wanted them to understand one important lesson. Your journey belongs to you. You don't have to rush. You don't have to compare yourself. You don't have to follow someone else's path. The most important thing is to understand yourself, respect yourself, and make choices that bring you peace. Looking back, the person who discovered my secret didn't ruin my life. He changed it. He showed me that sometimes the door we are afraid to open is the same door that leads to a better version of ourselves. But my story wasn't finished yet, because after accepting myself, I faced the biggest challenge of all. Living my new life confidently in the real world. Not hiding, not pretending, not constantly looking over my shoulder. Actually living. And that was the moment I discovered whether my transformation was only something I felt in private, or whether I was finally ready to embrace who I had become. The first time I truly stepped into the world without trying to hide, I realized something important. The hardest battle was never with other people. The hardest battle was always inside my own mind. For years, I had imagined everyone watching me, judging me, and noticing every small detail. I thought every mistake would be obvious. I thought every person I passed would somehow know my entire story. But when I finally stopped running from myself, I discovered a surprising truth. The world was not as frightening as my own thoughts had made it. I started focusing less on what strangers might think, and more on how I felt. I stopped trying to create a perfect image and started building a real connection with myself. That change was the biggest transformation of all. Before, I believed confidence came from looking a certain way. I was wrong. Confidence came from accepting myself even when I was still learning. There were moments when I didn't feel perfect. There were moments when I felt nervous. There were moments when old fears tried to return. But the difference was that I no longer let those fears control my choices. I had spent too many years hiding. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what could have happened if I had been brave enough to be myself. My journey also taught me something about people. Sometimes we expect rejection before anyone has even given us a reason to expect it. We create painful stories in our minds. We imagine conversations that never happen. We prepare ourselves for people to leave before they even decide what they feel. And because of that fear, we sometimes push away the happiness that is waiting for us. I learned that honesty creates opportunities. Not every person will understand immediately. Not every person will react perfectly. But the people who truly care about you will see beyond one part of your life. They will see your kindness, your personality, your memories together, your heart. And those are the things that truly define a person. As my confidence grew, I started seeing my past differently. I used to regret all the years I spent hiding. I used to wish I had discovered myself earlier. But eventually I realized those years were also part of my story. They taught me patience. They taught me empathy. They taught me how important it is to support others who are struggling. Because someone else out there was probably sitting alone, feeling the same fear I once felt. Someone else was wondering if they were the only person experiencing those emotions. Someone else was searching for the courage to understand themselves. And if my journey could help even one person feel less alone, then every difficult moment had a purpose. I also learned that transformation is not about becoming someone completely new. It is about removing the barriers that stop you from showing who you already are. The person I became was not created overnight. That person was always there. I was simply learning how to let that person be seen. The biggest lesson I want people to understand is this. Never let fear make every decision in your life. Fear will always tell you to hide. Fear will always tell you that you are not ready. Fear will always show you the worst possible outcome. But growth begins when you take small steps despite that fear. You don't have to have every answer today. You don't have to understand your entire future today. You only need the courage to be honest with yourself. The day Alex discovered my secret, I thought my life was falling apart. I thought that moment would become the memory that ruined everything. But years later, I realized it was actually the moment my real life began. The person who found my secret didn't take away my old life. He gave me the courage to create a better one. A life where I wasn't constantly pretending. A life where I could smile without feeling like I was hiding something. A life where I finally understood that being myself was not something I needed to apologize for. Looking back, I realized the biggest change wasn't the clothes, the style, or the appearance. The biggest change was the relationship I had with myself. For the first time, I stopped seeing myself as someone who needed to be fixed. I started seeing myself as someone who deserved understanding. And that changed everything. If there is one thing I hope someone remembers from my story, it is this. Your journey is yours. Your timing is yours. Your feelings are yours. Take the time you need to understand yourself. Learn, grow, and surround yourself with people who respect you. Because the moment you stop fighting who you are and start understanding yourself, that is the moment your new life can truly begin. And for me, that new life started with a secret. A secret I thought would destroy me. A secret that instead showed me the person I was always meant to become. I couldn't go back. Not because I lost something, but because I finally found something I had been searching for my entire life. I found myself.